So we are at Freiburg Contact Improvisation Festival 2023. My name is Irene Sposetti, former teacher of the event, and
I was a participant in your conversation, also a former teacher in the event.
so
My name is David.
reporting from a lab we just had. The main question is like where content improvisation is right now, / what is happening in these last 10 years, and where is it heading to? The question raised in me out of being exposed to a lot of events, activity, and people attending classes and events that have a very broad spectrum concept of what content improvisation might be, and also I would say / expectations or intentions while they come to a class, for example, or they come to an event of content improvisation. I am a facilitator, organizer, so I meet a lot of that. Also, like I travel a lot through Europe, Central America, US, and I feel that there is like in many contexts there is like similar dynamic happening. So this broad spectrum.
How would you define that similar dynamic?
Of having a more and more blurriness, I would say, around the practice. Blurriness in terms of content of like a dance form, a research-oriented based dance form, which now seems to be named in many contexts, often where there is just simple touch. I feel that relating and touch becomes almost like something in which content improvisation represents. It's like when two humans on various dance floors meet and have some creative meeting, sensual, sexual, social, emotional, and there is maybe touch involved, that might be called content improvisation.
And how was the conversation around this topic at this lunch evolved? And
Yeah, so my question is like to colleagues and teachers and organizer, asking, do you experience that? What is your experience? And how do we locate ourselves as facilitator and as people that love the form, even looking at the fact that the form is evolving and there is like more and more people eventually like having various ideas about it or modalities of making it, and it's like, so is that freedom undermining the form? Is it empowering it? So the fact that it's not fixed and labeled in a method is like a power, but is that maybe tilting a point that maybe is undermined by it?
I just had a kind of a visual image of if Nancy, Steve, etc., if the first generation, if they were here now, what would they say? You know, would they say that they feel that people appropriating contact improvisation as a title for a particular experience, is that enriching overall or undermining the form? And the fact that they made this choice so many years ago to not make it a copyright. You know, body mind centering, which is very often, very connected to CI, they made such a different choice. Now there are all kinds of people bringing in body mind centering into things, so elements. And one of the participants here said she brings in contact principles into the BDSM, polyamorous community. For me, it was really enriching to hear lots of different perspectives. It was mostly about the United States and Europe. Like I would have been really curious if there had been someone from Asia, Africa, etc. And I'm sort of inspired to stay with this question myself, because in a way, I think what you introduced as a topic is something that I think all of us have. If I could just make my opinion, I think all of us have that with ourselves. Like, what am I doing? Is it a pure contact improvisation when I bring in choreographic tools from elsewhere, or Buto or other traditions, or whatever it happens to be? Am I diluting the form or am I enriching it? Very different as a dancer mover in a jam than as a teacher facilitator. So it was really nice to hear from different people.
Can I say?
So I might also offer more feedbacks that were offered
Yeah,
by the
that would be
group. But like
lovely.
some spoke about the fact that actually is pretty empowering. The fact that there is like a larger public that for some reason start to say content improvisation and maybe approach a class even having a very different idea of what's gonna happen or what is gonna find. And then thanks to that attention and that, you know, wider diffusion, let's say, they have the chance of actually meeting maybe a practitioner that is like more dedicated, and then they can enter maybe a path, more engaged path, and get to know more about the
Check
practice.
out these resources. You can come take a class with me.
Yeah, so like somehow can be just like a way of also like that more people actually can access the practice, and the practice actually benefit of a larger crowds that maybe normally, you know, the circle of CI is not very good in producing. I don't know. I mean, that means there is like some more efficient.
I also feel that it was really interesting to hear different perspectives on jam experience versus class, workshop, festival.
Yes.
Because that seemed to be really divergent, because if one's, not to say that other people might be using the phrase contact improvisation for their offerings, but in terms of us here at the table, I think there's not that similar confusion. So, but the jam, like what to do in a jam, whose responsibility is it and how? And you talked about 2 jams in Washington, D.C., one, the old guard, where it's sort of our contact improvisation, and the new guard, which is this diluted form or whatever we want to call it.
With 5 rhythms, more emotional releases, or maybe like lower on the floor, connecting and melting in one another. And that's the jam. That's really like the color of that jam, and feeling like there is a gap. And even I would say now is like something new. I asked actually to one of the old guards, say, hey, what do you feel about that? Have you ever addressed that person and asked, hey, what is your content improvisation jam about? That's something, you know, I ask between practitioners, how do we relate also with these new organizers, new teachers that might, you know, bring me, I say a blurriness, that's the word I'm using, but then again.
And it's...
I have a question as the last question also, like, how do you think this conversation is benefiting you as a teacher and the other teachers? Maybe like, were there clear takes from this meeting?
I feel that certainly everyone came away with the question, when and how do I want to really articulate in a jam context, in a class or teaching, what I consider to be CI, what the sort of core of the standard principled practice is, and when not. Like that felt really present, I think, in the conversation.
Yeah, and then actually you were suggesting that a way that maybe it's like, okay, when we meet people that maybe are very far from what I would say, very far in the spectrum of what CI could be, maybe approaching the person and ask directly, hey, what is for you CI? And then just also you actually.
And maybe ultimately this blurriness becomes a catalyst for redefining what it really is and how it differentiates itself from other somatic practices, touch practices, movement practices, contemplative, all that stuff.
I might also breathe out and say, okay, I think it's a shared experience. I think by many and by everyone is active nowadays in the field, that might be a very widespread shared question. What we do with that, and how do I locate myself as practitioner and teacher and organizer? And I think that the let's have the question ripple in time and space and see how reality and us all together will dance it. And I'm creatively.
And if we had the conversation with everyone here at the teachers meeting, and then everyone who comes to the festival, even though there might be a much smaller spectrum compared to ecstatic dance, whatever, I'm sure there would be huge divergent opinions.
So
thank you for your opinions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.